businesses who are ambitious to grow. If you're experiencing a cash flow issue, cash flow blip as I call them, it can be a really lonely time. The last thing you want to do is have your staff alerted to this, and it's really quite hard to find some help, because clearly if you're having cash flow issues and you try to bring in a consultant, they're going to be a little bit dubious about whether they want to work with you, because they don't know if you're going to be able to pay their invoices. So I did this video really to give you some short-term cash flow tactics which will help you to immediately try to put cash back in your business. Now, these are holding tactics, and what I mean by that is they are short-term. They shouldn't be used for more than 3 to 6 months, because they could actually be damaging to your business in the longer term. Well, if you're having cash flow issues, the thing you need to do first is buy yourself some time. So these tactics hopefully will enable you to do this. But in the longer term, in buying yourself some time, please take that time that you've released to assess your position, understand how you've got to that position, and draw up a plan which is going to show how you are going to bring yourself out of the position you're in by a certain point in time. And that's really, really important that you use this alongside doing that. Okay, so first short-term cash flow tactic is the obvious, but let's do it properly. It's called hold back payment to your suppliers. Now, traditionally, what a lot of businesses will do will be ignore their suppliers, and this is really dangerous, because you can imagine if a supplier is not getting a response from you, this is probably going to invoke quite a radical approach by them, in terms of they'll put you on stop. Now, if that supplier is critical to your supply of services and products to the market, that's actually going to accelerate your demise. So get into a dialogue with your critical suppliers. Now, you can do this via email or telephone, but the idea is that what you're going to try to do is explain to them your position. You're going to give them confidence that you are moving out of this position, but you need time. And hence, what you're trying to get to is a payment plan, an agreed payment plan with your suppliers, which you are going to be able to live to. And you're going to incorporate that in the final step of this, which is your cash flow forecast, which I'll talk about later on. So this is why you're going to strike up a dialogue. The other things within this dialogue, little tactics, is try to draw this part out as much as possible. Have the dialogue, but have the dialogue over a period of time, i.e. days or weeks maybe. Now, this can often be facilitated by taking up some part of this dialogue via email, because obviously email doesn't invoke an immediate response. So if you're trying to negotiate around a payment plan, then take a couple of days to reply, but as long as you're replying, as long as you're still in dialogue, then the supplier will still be confident that you're on a plan to pay them. And then the other part is where you've got one-off suppliers and you're trying to have a dialogue, or you're speaking to them on the phone, keep the dialogue quite impersonal. And what I mean by that is where you've agreed that you're going to pay them, use the sort of language which says, that's great, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load you onto our payment schedule for this month. Or, yeah, that's fine, okay, we will put you on our end of month payment schedule. I'll make sure that our purchase ledger department or my bookkeeper load you onto our payment plan. And what that's doing is it's telling the supplier you're going to pay, but it's not going to tell them when the cash will go into the bank. Okay, so just keep the dialogue fluid, and a tactic which is hold back payment to your suppliers. Now, the other short-term tactic would be accelerate your work in progress. Now, this applies not just to industries which are making a product, but also to service industries. Because remember, work in progress is defined as any job that you've started which you have not yet invoiced for. That is work in progress. Now, there can be a multitude of reasons why you haven't got to invoice or completion of that job. You need to find out what is holding up completion of that job. So go back into your operations, speak to the people that are delivering the job and find out what it is, and also set targets with them on completion of jobs. Because what actually this will do is put across to them the importance of completing jobs. I worked with an IT department, an IT company, whose main thrust was selling website design. Now, their targets were all around orders, number of orders coming through the pipeline. What they weren't doing is completing the jobs. So they had a huge amount of jobs on their books, but because they were so targeted on getting more and more on their books, they weren't completing the jobs. So they were carrying a huge amount of work in progress. It is better if you're in a cash flow situation to make sure that you've got just as much completions flowing through and you're accelerating the cash coming through your business. So speak to your people, get them on board, set them targets and get them to take ownership for delivery of your service delivery or your product delivery. This will also help them to prioritize their work as well. So you're giving some real clear direction to them at this point that the completion is just as important as the sales onboarding. The other area on here as well, which is related but might be specific to particular industries, and I'm thinking more construction industries or again service industries where you have longer type jobs, try to invoice as frequently as possible. So when you're scoping the job, or if you have scoped the job, make sure that the person responsible for invoicing is actually doing the invoicing. Again, I worked for a business where the lady that did the invoicing was on holiday and no one actually covered the invoicing for 2 weeks. That could potentially be quite critical if your payment terms are based on 30 days from date of invoice. Okay, so just make sure that you're looking at your processes and you're making sure that you're giving yourself every opportunity to get cash into your business. Now, what's related to this is the obvious credit control, but a lot of businesses don't do credit control very well, or they've assigned credit control to someone who actually doesn't really want to do it. Credit control is a really important task, so make sure that you've chosen someone who actually enjoys doing it, because they will naturally shy away from it if you've given them chasing up late payment to someone who's quite timid and really doesn't like to have to ask people for money. And I have seen this again quite frequently in small businesses. If you can't find that person in your business, subcontract it out and pay them according to the amount of cash that you're getting in. Don't pay them a set rate. If they're not getting your cash in, don't pay them. So again, credit control, really important. Make sure also that your customers have a point of contact to resolve their queries on their invoices. I remember I worked with a business. I was actually on the other side of the desk. What I was trying to do is clear a load of our supplier payments out. And I was ringing quite small businesses. I particularly remember it was a signage company. And I had to ring them about 3 or 4 times to say, is this debt still outstanding with you? And can you confirm the amount so we can make payment? I spoke to their voicemail a couple of times, and I eventually spoke to the owner, and it was obviously a solopreneur, and I said, is this like, yeah, I meant to keep chasing you for it, but I didn't. I said, is there a query on the invoice? No. So, make sure that you've got a point of contact. If someone actually does have a query on your invoice, make sure that someone's on the other side of the phone, that they can quickly resolve it for them. And that's really just a no-brainer. And that can be someone within your organisation again, or someone that you subcontract that out to. The third tactic, get immediate funding. So often with businesses, it's very quick that it happens that they're pushed out of business because there is a critical supplier who suddenly decides they're not going to give you any credit, or they're not going to wait any longer for the payment, and they'll file some sort of legal action against you, which will force you out of business. So in terms of getting immediate funding, this again is holding funds. This is holding funds for contingency. If your business has been profitable for the last 2 years, Funding Circle I've found are excellent. They will give you immediate funding up to 50,000, I think it is, very, very quickly. I've done it in 10 days. So if you're in that position where you've hit a cash flow blip, but up to now have been trading fairly successfully, i.e. you can demonstrate profitability from your year-end accounts, then this one you should be able to get through quite quickly, very easily. Family and friends, speak to your family and friends, tell them what you're going through, what your issues are. Again, I know it's really difficult, but sometimes it's actually a relatively small amount of funds that you need for this contingency pot, but it will make the difference between you staying in business or not. The third one, and really be careful with this one, this will all depend on your current banking relationship, but if you do have a really good personal banking relationship, perhaps ask for an overdraft facility or an increase to your overdraft facility. Now, again, like I said, if you've had a good relationship with your bank and you can demonstrate to them that you have a plan for a way to move forward, or your plan is that you're going to move forward by doing a full review of your processes, a full review of where your cash is being bottlenecked, and a full review of your profitability standing, then they might be open to giving you a bank account. But again, this one, take a judgment on where you are with your bank. Another short-term cash flow tactic, get credit. Now, again, it surprises me how many small businesses don't go out and get credit from their suppliers. So actually, I was working with a business a couple of years ago. We're actually £7 million turnover business, but with some of the raw material suppliers, they had no line of credit with them, and that meant that they were paying for deliveries of raw materials at the point that the materials were delivered. Now, and we actually looked at some of these suppliers, and these suppliers, we were spending kind of 200,000-300,000 a year with them. So if you've got some significant suppliers that you're working with, go back, give them a forecast as well of what you're going to be spending with them in the future, and also demonstrate commitment by showing them how much you've been spending with them in the past. Every supplier wants longevity of supply. It's much easier to build and keep your existing customers. So they'll perfectly understand that in order to keep you, they'll have to give you a line of credit. If you've already got a line of credit, try and extend that line of credit. Try and push it out to 60 days. Again, in certain industries, 60 days is actually quite reasonable, especially construction. Construction, really, really long terms of payment there. So get involved and find out what's right for your industry. Likewise, again, in the IT industry, what you'll find is direct debits are the norm. People expect to pay direct debits. You think about your phone bill or your broadband, it all goes out on direct debits, and it should be no different for your business. So try and get your business invoicing or your invoice terms on direct debit. A lot of people will just take it as read, and they're quite happy to do that, and that means you haven't got to chase payment. That's a part of your business that will just automatically flow. Also, the other areas, you could find an alternative supplier. So if you're up to the hilt with one supplier, you've pushed your credit limit as far as you can, or maybe they're not even wanting to negotiate, go and find an alternative supplier. It's a big marketplace out there. There's no loss from going to see what else there is. And actually, if you get a new supplier on board, you might just get another 30 days of payment terms, which is going to help you in the short term. Credit cards, again, another little tactic only to be used in the short term. But credit cards are quite good in terms of moderating the amount that you have to take out of your business. If you can get an interest-free credit card for use of your personal spending, that's going to mean you won't need to take as much dividends out of your business to support yourself. You're going to use your own personal line of credit. Likewise, make sure that you are using a business credit card with your own business spend. That's just a no-brainer. You should have at least 50 days credit on that, and use it for all those travel and incidental items, and maybe some of the larger spends that you need. Okay, and the next one is, again, a bit of a dangerous tactic, but I have seen it work really, really effectively. Just assess your customers, the ones that aren't paying you in time, and assess whether or not to put them on stop. Now, I used to work, or I still work with a business where they had some very large customers, NHS customers, and you find with large customers often they don't pay, not because they don't want to pay, it's actually due to the bureaucracy of their own processes. So you'll be amazed at how quickly you'll get a back's payment through when you just put them on the stop. Give them a warning that you're going on stop, give them a sufficient time to pay, 24, 48 hours. If no progress there, just put them on the stop, because what you'll find is the operations people that are using your product or service, those are the ones that will go back and shout to finance, and that you'll be surprised at how quickly finance can turn it around and pay you. And actually you won't have that problem again. Now, if your customers continue to be poor payers, you really do need to assess whether or not you want to continue with them as your customers. But again, a medium-term solution really is assessing your customers. Immediately put them on the stop if it's not going to damage your business. The final tactic is the old favourite, but cash flow forecasting, but do a really short-term cash flow forecast. When I say short-term, it should be in a daily short-term forecast for going out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. And the way you construct your forecast will be that you're going to put in all your fixed outgoings, and that's going to be like your payroll, your PAYE, that's your VAT, all the things you absolutely need to pay. And then you plug in daily as the cash comes in, and that will tell you, and along the bottom you've got what your bank balance is going to be, and that will tell you how much you've got spare to pay your suppliers. And only pay your suppliers which are shouting. So again, I'm often quite surprised when I go into businesses who are having cash flow issues, and I find that they've paid a whole load of suppliers who actually weren't shouting for payment. So you're going to prioritize your payments of suppliers in that way exactly, rather than payment terms. Now again, it's going to need a little bit of your overview on this, because clearly if it's a critical supplier, what you don't want them doing is putting you on the stop. But for your overhead costs, hold back the payment as long as possible and use this cash flow forecasting technique to help you prioritize which ones and when you're going to pay them. Ultimately, with the cash flow forecast, what you're trying to do is build up a contingency reserve. So if you've got no overdraft facility and you're trying to keep your bank account at zero, i.e. you can't go into overdraft, actually look to try and push that up to 5,000, 10,000, whatever needs to be your cash flow reserve. Because remember, again, in these circumstances is often something quite unusual that's going to be the tipping point that pushes your business out of business. Okay, that's it for me now. Hopefully some of that's going to help you. Look out for my next video, which will be coming up soon, which is all about your cash cycle.